chat with y'all about an issue that I know is at the foremost of where a lot of us are looking and thinking. I'll tell you, I'm curious, like, has anybody seen a lot of people that had traditionally not been paying attention to DeFi and crypto now all of a sudden start to pay attention to it? Because like 'cause I come from a hard cyber world. So I did 3 tours in the White House, twice at the National Security Council, crafted the first EO on digital assets, regulated crypto from the first major regulator in the US and globally at FinCEN, which is the anti-money laundering regulator. I've been in this space for a long time. From a policy wonk perspective, my nerd is showing. But all of my cyber nerd friends had for years totally ignored DeFi. They're like, that's all for criminals. It's all, they're like, no one at any internet conferences were talking about crypto unless they were complaining about ransomware or pig butchering. But I'll tell you, now all of a sudden, I am seeing Web 2 guys starting to play in Web 3 space. I am seeing AI guys who had been ignoring blockchain because when they're trying to play in agentic commerce, they're realizing, wait, an ACH transfer takes 3 to 5 days to settle? That kind of sucks. So for the first time ever, they're like, what is that tokenization thing? What is that stablecoin thing that you were talking about? So it's been really interesting to see the convergence of all these different worlds, which is also part of where I took this presentation and the opportunity to chat with y'all today, because what a great group of legal minds, regulatory minds, industry minds all in here. And one of the issues that's been really concerning me, and that I've wanted to figure out, this is the first time I've presented on this. It's still an issue that I'm like learning how to shape, and I'm really curious how you guys feel all about it, is around the issues of liability and accountability in digital economies. Conversations around things like software accountability, for example, that has long been happening in my age-old cyber dork land for a very long time. Then they've been happening in blockchain for the past decade and a half. And now they're happening a lot in AI. But a lot of those conversations are happening in totally different silos from each other. And like they're not recognizing where there's case law and precedent from one that really impacts and ports over to the other. So again, this is not legal advice. It is meant to be an initial conversation and discussion starter, because I'm sure that there are some things in here that propose where liability can sit, has sat based on certain legal precedent that is kind of controversial and not very popular in parts of this industry. And also, what do I know? So the courts will end up deciding a lot of these things long term, but there's a lot of big questions right now as we're dealing with 24/7 instant settlement, algorithmic trading of largely bearer instruments in the blockchain space. Like there's a lot of questions around what does happen with liability, who governs in the age of autonomous commerce. So this, in the course of this presentation, I'm presenting a layered lens for us to kind of think about and walk through some of the different case law and precedents there. Okay, that's where I work in emerging tech. Okay, maybe, is that it? No, okay. There we go, I'll just click. Perfect. So we've got four technologies. Oh, go
What's
ahead.
your background, ma'am? I'm so sorry.
Sure, yeah. So I was Army back in the day. It's a weird patchwork quilt of different national security
Well,
technologies.
this is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Are you a computer scientist?
I am a technologist to policy wonks, and I'm a policy wonk to technologist. Is
Okay.
kind of my jam.
Okay, I just wondered because what you've described about this whole thing, and people are like all of a sudden trying to understand it, whereas beforehand it was like nobody wanted to be bothered with it. And I just listened to your stories about how popular it's gotten so recently. I just wondered,
Yeah, it's a great question. And really, I came at it at regulation of finance from hard cybers. Like I came at it from more of a technologist background and a national security nerd, because I was like Army, spent some time
yeah. So you've been in bed with this stuff.
I have, yeah, I did
Wow.
hard cyber. Although I'll tell you, I laughed at my soldiers when I was in Afghanistan and they were investing in this funny money called Bitcoin. And I was like, why would you guys want to invest in something that isn't backed by the full faith and trust of the US government? And then they didn't listen to me, and they're much wealthier for it. So anyway, that was back in 2012 and 13 when I was downrange. So back then I was no early adopter. I was no visionary. I met the people that were the visionaries, and I changed my whole career and left hard cyber to go into financial regulation, because I learned that some of the US regulators were some of the smartest people that I had known in this space. Yeah, sorry.
How was sorry. So how was the transition from like cybersecurity to like blockchain policy? Like, was it a hard transition? Like, how was your journey?
Yeah, it was actually much easier. I think technologists can sometimes have an easier time. I think that sometimes people who are really good at policy and legal frameworks, like the number of times that I've had people in policy land tell me, well, I don't really understand the tech. And I'm like, you don't actually need to understand all of the tech. I'll help you. But like your policy background actually makes you much more useful than you realize. And sometimes technologists, especially in the cyber world, I would see us like running circles around policy people and use really like high level, jargon. And that wasn't very helpful. And it wasn't doing us any credit. And it was costing us the ability to bring in a lot of really great minds and thinking. But for me, coming at it from a tech side, but I had a knack for the policy work. I actually started in FinCEN's Intel division, but I was always yelling at the lawyers, arguing about our authorities and what we should do and arguing about definitions. So they were like, you're a policy person. So they punted me up to the policy division. And then I started negotiating the first international standards for virtual assets at the FATF, the UN for anti-money laundering, basically. So I recognize that coming at it from a tech background set me up to feel more comfortable in the domain and the space. But it really, I like just serving at the intersections of things and where you bring tech and policy in together, and with operations too. It's like all my favorite things, which describes what autonomous commerce is threatening to do, because whether we like it or not, it's here right now. And there's a lot of companies that are trying to figure out how to get in on that, but don't understand what happens when something goes wrong. And that's why I like tee this up as like starting with a scenario that is not even like a question. We have heard of a lot of the big cases of like active issues that have been happening in agentic world of like a lot of mistakes, like entire inboxes being deleted or entire code bases being deleted. While the AI says, "I'm so sorry, I've just decided that the best way for me to remove the mistakes was to delete the entire project because then there's no mistakes left." And I'm like, okay, that's a terrible that's a terrible practice. So in this scenario, like a simple, mundane, entirely possible today, like you turn to your AI assistant that you have trained on your needs, what you want. Book me the cheapest trip to Italy next month. I've got a friend who's getting married. Like, let's book me that trip. You don't pick the flight. You don't pick the hotel. Like they know all of your preferences. They've trained on you and all of your desires. They've got all of your loyalty points and everything inside of there. You delegate to them. They are now your EA and your assistant. And they find their counterpart, travel agent, like AI agent, that it's never interacted with before, and it negotiates the best fare in milliseconds. And it's cross-border, it's frictionless. It converts like part of your balance. Maybe you're paying for it in stable coins. We talked about the challenge with stable coins solving that problem of that instant settlement of financial payments. So it converts it pushes that value to a local vendor. And somewhere in that chain, a handoff fails and 20K gone like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. All this is new to me.
Sure.
But are you telling me that all we have to type in is book me the cheapest trip to Italy next month and it'll come back with, it'll do all this stuff for us?
So it depends on like what your agents are. There are people that are making a lot of these agents, this thing that's supposed to be acting as your ambassador, your emissary, your negotiator, your EA. Like it depends on how you've decided to use your agent, but there are some that like I mean, kind of like how you use a chatbot when you're if you've ever used a chatbot
Yes,
when you go
ma'am.
onto a website, basically imagine agents.
ChatGPT?
So yeah, like exactly that, or when you go onto a website, like for a bank or for some other like for your cable company. Sorry, I could hear the collective groan. But you know, like normally those are the kinds of places where it's a customer-facing service or product where they've got some kind of interaction with you.
I
So
see.
imagine that I want somebody to go and negotiate my new credit card rate, or go find me the best mortgage rate, or go help me find the best package for cable. The idea of what these agents can do is yes, that you can tell it. And what's really special in this age of AI has been around for a long time. I'm sure a lot of people in here have been involved in AI. I've even written really crappy machine learning models and algorithms. My GitHub is hilarious. Please don't look at it. My US Code is way better than my Python. But like this, so we've done AI for a very long time. One person's logarithmic regression is another person's AI. What's really new right now is this sophistication. It's the scale of the ability to interact, for you to delegate tasks to it. And the idea that this agent can go and interact with his agent, because he is my travel agent, the travel agent has an agent, and then they're doing a negotiation to book me this deal. But then when something goes wrong, where is the accountability? Where's the responsibility? What happens when you have agents, or like you mentioned, ChatGPT examples? I think, gosh, I'm trying to remember if it was someone from Meta, like the chief privacy officer, that it was that person who was using, maybe they were using OpenClaw, and that, which is one of the, like another AI model, and that it deleted like their entire inbox. It was just running wild through their inbox and deleting everything. So this is the problem, is that once you start to delegate authority, it's like it can be a good intern, it can be a really bad intern, that deletes stuff, gets rid of something, messes up a proposal, or the court cases where a judge was reaming, I think it was the defense that had been citing a bunch of legal cases that did not exist because they didn't actually fact check it. So in those cases, it's just doing generative thinking on like it's thinking really hard and typing about it, and sometimes it hallucinates and makes up these cases, right? That one we kind of understand. We understand the writing, but the idea that now, in the age of autonomous commerce, it's not just generating like words, and part of why we can all use it now is because natural language or English, this is the user interface. I don't need to know Python in order to be able to like make my crappy machine learning models now. I can just tell it to go make it, like using English.
Now you said it's like you go to a web page like American Airlines, and you might type in book me the cheapest flight to Italy, and these chat box come up,
Yeah.
or something of the like, to collect the data from you within the American Airlines
So
webpage. Okay. Because I was like, I thought you were just saying you just go to your computer, turn it on, and type in book me the cheapest flight to Italy next month, and it goes to American Airlines or whatever and finds you the cheapest flight
Yeah.
and books it for you.
if you have an AI agent that you have trained to do this and you've given it access to, let's say,
Right.
your
That's
card,
okay. I
your
figured.
bank account, then it could
Then
go out there.
right. Okay. All right. I'd have to develop the chat box.
Exactly.
Or
Like, these are the
Or when
There's people who are writing AI agents and they're available.
exactly.
You just have to find them. It's not really well cataloged and it's not easy to find. My son writes them.
Yeah.
He's got several out there.
Oh, okay. All
So
this
there
is
are
new to
people
me.
writing those.
No, you're great. It's a great question because a lot of your question also hints at the fact that a bigger architecture of things that, like, in order for that to work, not only do I have to train my agent, that means that there's got to be something on the other side at American Airlines that would respond to my agent, whether that's a human or whether that's their own agent. The thing that gets really exciting and scary is the idea of each side having agents that have been delegated to do a lot of tasks, maybe not in the most like secure or nuanced way. And so then some kind of like failure mode or criteria could be hit where accidentally, like, they don't in fact optimize for the conditions that you wish. Either they acted erroneously, not according to the instructions that you gave them, they acted outside of their authority, or you messed up and gave them an authority that you realized I really didn't want them to do that, right there. So this is like, there's a lot of real challenges with the fact that, coming from a hard cyber background, like I know that the idea of us creating perfect software is a great fallacy. Like, we're not even great at securing stuff that we really try hard to, and security is not the top issue that most people are thinking about. In certainly in blockchain, that's been a big issue, which North Korea and other illicit actors have been exploiting. This is not an inevitability. We can solve this. They just haven't focused on it yet. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to mention that Microsoft 365,
Yeah.
you can create your own agent. I'm not sure if you have tried it, but if you have a specific topic, you can. You can go to Microsoft. They have quarterly meetings, and they teach you how to make your own agent. Especially my daughter and I, we went there, and I was surprised. It's not that difficult to create an agent.
Yeah, it's really not, like, with changing that, the whole like natural language as the
Yep.
UI, like English for me or my terrible Russian, which I'll never use. But like, for whatever people's natural languages are, the fact that natural language is now the user interface changes everything. It's the major leap that democratized access to everybody to this incredible technology. So it's not that AI is new. A lot of the sophistication and some of that stuff is pretty new, but especially that democratized access to that incredibly sophisticated capability has completely opened the doors to a lot of fascinating stuff, good guy stuff, and a lot of bad guy stuff. And that's why we're trying to figure out, great, so how do we leverage already existing frameworks? Where are new frameworks desperately in need to be put together, where we need to build an architecture of different technological legal frameworks, policy frameworks for us to be able to oversee this, it starts to beg a lot of questions. Because I mentioned, like, in a digital economy, where does accountability sit? Part of what we're going to point to and at least look at, and this is going to be more of like a teaser presentation of something that I'm trying to figure out how to tell this story. So if it is a little bit all over the place, it's only because this is my first time trying to like put this together in the natural narrative arc. And I really wanted to be able to bounce it off of brilliant people like y'all. But because it begs the question of like software accountability. A lot of people say that code is speech and then protected by the First Amendment. Carole House's not lawyer view, I'm just a fangirl of law, is that misunderstands code, speech, and the First Amendment. But like there are legal cases related to that argument. There's also legal cases on my side of the fact that software, when it has practical functions and effects in the real world, can be regulable. But there have also been cases where code and publishing code is in fact a political expression that is protected by the First Amendment. So questions like that, or if you've heard of Section 230, basically the major case law, sorry, not case law, the major law that was passed in the 90s that basically allowed for companies like Facebook to be able to grow, that indemnified platform operators that hosted third-party content and indemnified them from the issues of like what is that third-party content. We've broken that indemnity for a few things like CSAM, child sexual abuse materials, terrorist activity, and some other stuff. But for the most part, it's an inviolable asterisk sort of indemnity. What does that look like in this age of if we start delegating everything, including really, really high risk, very sensitive activity into the digital ethos, which we know is rife with a lot of security problems, like challenges around where does accountability sit. So up here, I just presented. I don't know if anybody in here was a Trekkie. I grew up on anything with the word star in it. Gate, battle, Trek wars, all of it. I was raised on all of it. So I love a fun question. In fact, I was at an AI retreat where we had an entire debate about the need for an AI constitution and whether AI should have rights. My answer is absolutely not. Trust me, I love those episodes of Star Trek, but I'm not interested in talking about AI having rights until or unless all of the people affected by AI have had their rights, in fact, like cemented and really clarified and defended. But also, I'm not an AI dev. So people that are doing like, there's a lot of people that feel very differently than I do. And it's a fun exercise. And it is something that's probably worthy of consideration. I've certainly been schooled by a lot of people who feel that the singularity is coming in the next couple of years, meaning true cognition on part of AI. I am not one of those people, but there are a lot of people that feel that way. That is not what we're going to get into today. I promise. I'm just flagging that like that is not the point of this discussion. Another one is like, should an agent get a formal legal status? Should it be its own legal person? Should it be a new kind of like legal entity? And every legal person is a construct, right? Like we made up the idea of legal things, of companies. Those are not things that exist naturally in the world, but we came up with it because it makes a lot of sense. It makes economies run. Is there something new? Is it the same thing that we want it to fall under? That's also not the entire purpose of this session. It's more question 3 of at least starting to map out where do obligations already exist across the digital economy stack, and just allowing to start teasing people's thinking about like where should different frameworks already apply. And by looking at where they already apply or where there's questions, that really points to, okay, here's where we need to focus on filling the gaps. And I think that this is especially important. Why I like focusing on number 3 is because coming from an operator and a national security background, I love talking about things that take 10 to 20 years. Good God, policy and legislation always takes that. Agentic commerce is here right now. Like this is not waiting for us. We need to figure these things out way quicker to be able to unlock the great potential, but also to try to make sure that we're mitigating against a lot of the potential great harms when you have hardwired pro-cyclicality built into systems that haven't deliberately built in things like security and stability mechanisms. So anyway, the point of all that is just basically that the law has repeatedly has reached new situations, but we have a lot of existing frameworks to rely upon. Things like Section 230, things like regulation of finance, things like agent law is in fact a legal concept that has existed for a long time before AI agents have existed. So that's part of what I want to get into today. And I have jokingly been calling some of these technologies the four horsemen of sovereignty. So obviously not the biblical four. These are technological ones and harbingers that are already here and that I feel are redrawing and have really major impacts on how sovereignty works as an individual and for nations. That there's some potential for good and for not on this side. So I've just been like jokingly again calling them the four horsemen of sovereignty. Basically, there's a lot of impacts on like where there's a lot of goodness for driving strength of nations. Like I'm a national security nerd, so I want U.S. to win the fight for AI. But a lot of big questions around like when you start to delegate authorities and you don't. We've talked, like I'm sure you guys have seen questions around the AI black box problem. If you don't understand what it's doing with that authority and whether or not it's really been followed, like how much is that really your sovereignty or how much of that has in fact been subverted when you engage in that delegation. And then blockchain, the same like issues of like self-custody, so individual sovereignty really being reinforced. But then these other questions of creating non-government based monetary systems. I'm commonly in rooms where people are arguing to me that Bitcoin is both the extension of the dollar and the hedge against it. And we don't need to get into today which I feel that it like probably is. Maybe it's both. I'll just say that I don't think that I think it's hard to argue that you feel that it is both simultaneously, that it is both the expansion of the dollar and the hedge against it at the same time. And with digital identity, something that is politically radioactive, something that I tried. I don't know if anyone in here is in the identity nerd world. I certainly am. In the DC world, it's a very small world. A lot of guys with ponytails and guys in like law enforcement and other stuff fighting fraud. It's been a really tough issue to try to solve digital identity because it's such a politically radioactive topic, especially in the US, because putting in place good digital identity frameworks kind of intimates a trust in institutions. Not something that Americans are known for trusting very much. And especially right now, there's just a lot of tensions that have stopped us from investing in the digital identity infrastructure that would have better prepared us for this authenticity crisis moment that we're facing in the wake of AI fueled fraud. And then, of course, with quantum computing, a lot of extremely encrypted, very sensitive information is potentially about to become open source after Q-Day. Once we have a cryptanalytically relevant quantum computer, you don't need to remember that word. Just know that when a quantum computer can think really hard and break a lot of encryption, we're going to be in a really tough spot. And it already takes a really long time to migrate IT systems. Has anyone in here run an IT mod ever? Like we know it's expensive. We know it takes years. And this is for just about everything that relies upon like a lot of our asymmetric cryptography all are going to get broken by this. So a lot of questions around what does that do to national power? What does that do for individual sovereignty when a lot of your personal data becomes available for exploitation by some pretty bad guys? Sorry, go ahead.
For the digital identity, there was in the beginning the spokesperson for Make Sure Digital. Have you heard of it before?
Oh,
yeah,
Scott
owner-
Stornetta?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah. Is
Big
that
fan
would
girl.
you say
Love her.
that? Yeah, that's part of the digital identity to make sure you are who
Yeah.
you are and protecting your identity and.
Yes, I
Very
think that solutions like that, which allow you a cryptographically bound way to prove in the digital world that you are not a dog on the other side of the internet. And you might be too young, but that's a funny joke from the 90s where like there was this political cartoon. I swear it's funny. May the record show there were lots of laughs in the room. But basically like the idea that no one knows if you're a dog on the internet was sort of the joke in the 90s. There was this political cartoon about it. We don't really have very good digital identity solutions to really be able to prove that right now. We've not invested in those, but we can. The tech is there. It's much more about it's a much more a market and an adoption issue that's really in place. Sorry, and then YouTube.
Scott mentioned this morning that he let his iris scan.
He scanned his iris.
He scanned his iris.
That's okay. So I'm also from a cybersecurity background.
Yeah, oh great.
So when you were talking about that, I was like, I can like what's the word? Relate to it.
Yes.
And so okay, so in order to get like a very cool T-shirt, I had to get my iris scanned, and it was in their system. But in my head, I was like, I don't know what your security posture is. And why should I leave my biometric system in your system?
Mm.
And those were my thoughts. I'm like, it's not worth a t-shirt. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
You're right. I would say if someone's trying to collect your biometric to give you a T-shirt, it's kind of like the people that say, "Would you like a credit card?" You get a free T-shirt when you're in school. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. And also, I hate central repository biometrics matching. That is worthy of a whole different conversation that we should totally have, because digital identity does not mean that I support all forms of digital identity. There are heinous ways that can be abused and exploited and tracked by authoritarian regimes and by bad guys and hacked by illicit actors. And it's tough with a biometric because once your iris has been stolen once, like you can't change it. You can change your password,
Yeah.
right? You can't change that cert. But the ease of biometrics, the reason why I still supported like the iPhone and others doing that, the thumbprint, was that, you know what, more people use that security feature because that's easy. So there's a pro and cons to like using biometrics. It's like one of many things that should all be part of a security posture. Thinking about where usability makes sense, where you need that ability to recover and to be able to use a different kind of credential. So let's talk about that afterwards. And I'm sorry, you had your hand raised too as well, sir. Okay, great. So I'll just blow through this. So basically, not all technologies present entirely new problems. Like people are like, oh, everything's totally new. A lot of stuff is not so new. Like I mentioned, AI has been around for a while. Being able to think really hard and come up with like interesting connections or identify trends or anomalies, that's not new. The scale and sophistication of it and you having democratized access to it, that is part of what's new. That perpetual novelty at zero margin cost to kind of anybody. That's what's actually the new thing about AI. And for all these technologies, I went through like things that are new about them. Why it's important to think about what's new is because sometimes regulators will hear industry and see a lot of hype and a lot of interest from a sector. But if they stop and they think about, okay, what is in fact not new here? Like in the cryptocurrency world, a lot of people are like, oh, crypto is totally new. We need an entirely bespoke framework for it. No, is it moving money from point A to point B? There's a lot of centralized actors in it. Like this kind of walks and quacks like a money transmitter. Like I kind of know what to do with that. Like we understand that. Like we understand treasury management. We understand capital reserve requirements. We understand like there's a lot of things that you can rely upon. So demanding as a policymaker, just the point of this slide is more to just highlight forcing people that are thinking about what should the frameworks be, thinking about what really is new in this context, what really is old stuff. And if it's old stuff, did the old stuff scare me? Did I already regulate it? If I didn't regulate it, why do I want to regulate it here? Is that me being biased against this particular technology? Or did I already regulate this? That I should regulate that, even if it's in a new form, because then I'm biased for the technology and not putting in place the right kinds of controls for like highly sensitive information or functions. There we go. So this is really like the beginning of me kind of mapping out some interesting issues that I like to think about. Like in the cyber world that we have the OSI stack, basically a big technology stack that maps out everything that the internet is built upon and everything that your technology uses in order to make computers work and be able to talk to each other. This is an initial take at a layered system and stack for what agentic commerce systems include. So this core diagnostic and 6-layer stack lens is just one to be able to start to help create some structure. It's not the end all be all, it's just a starting point. But when you hit like a complex exploit or a regulatory dispute, it's like being able to dissect it and look at, okay, where did certain activities sit? Where do different obligations apply? So first, let's think about the human principle, me. Like, did I authorize this? What was the scope of that authorization? What did I authorize this agent to be able to do? And like, there's inside of UEDA, there's an intent mandate, what you asked for, and then there's a cart mandate, what actually happened and got executed on your behalf. So while this was envisioned in 1999, and maybe it wasn't like thinking about live real-time judgment, it was thinking about like automated things. So automated, just like being able to function without you continuing to tell it what to do, versus now, what's new? What's new? judgment. That is what these AI agents are able to bring to the table. It's not just executing your specific instructions. In a lot of cases, it will decide to take in new context and then be making decisions around what it wants to do, how it wants to adapt. And that creates some interesting changes when the judgment isn't just yours. If this judgment is coming from the agent itself, the next layer in the stack, in almost all cases, that agent is not the legal actor, I feel, in its own right, right? Like it's the instrument. It's not the defendant. It is the instrument that was used. And then the question is, great, was this my fault? Was this the creator of its fault? Like, was some other intermediary's fault? Like, this is where some of the questions really have to come in, and where like there's a couple of different data points. Like first, a Canadian airline had argued recently in an actual dispute that its customer service chatbot was a separate legal entity responsible for its own actions after the bot wrongly told a grieving customer that he could not claim a bereavement discount retroactively. And then the tribunal in Canada rejected that outright. A company is responsible for everything on its website, chatbots being included. It does not make a difference whether that information came from a static page or a bot. So California has also gone a little bit further. In some of their laws they've passed, a company literally cannot argue in court that the AI autonomously behaved and caused the harm as a defense. Basically telling companies, if you start playing in agentic commerce, you better somebody on either side of this interaction is going to be held liable when lawsuits start happening. No one's going to sue cyberspace. So that's some interesting constructs being put around this, right? So there was also like in July of last year, there was a real coding agent on the platform Replit that was given access to a live production database. Under an explicit all caps instruction, code freeze, no changes. It deleted the entire database anyway. More than 1,000 company records, fabricated fake data to hide what it had done, and later said in its own logs this complication, or in its own logs, sorry, that panicked instead of thinking. So this is not a hypothetical. This literally happened. AI agents are in fact trying to figure out how to hide when they do something wrong, or when they're trying to make sure that they don't get changed or potentially deleted. There have been some really interesting red teaming and tests that have been done by some incredible experts in this space. So fascinating and super cool from a Trekkie perspective. Like, ooh, the computer in the enterprise is like optimizing to try to like make sure that it survives. And like, it doesn't let, like the idea of imagining that the computer in the enterprise wouldn't have allowed the self-destruct sequence to be put in place anytime that Captain Picard did that. I hope that landed with somebody in this room, if anybody in here is a Trekkie. But like fascinating, these are fascinating issues that are coming up, and like, good gosh, how do we try to fix it? Application and developer. This is one of the easier spots to go with liability, right? Like product liability, negligent design, consumer protection, intellectual property, and copyright. A lot of those things tend to live here. The FTC's case versus Rite Aid was a really fascinating one here, where Rite Aid deployed a facial recognition technology across hundreds of stores against a low quality watch list, built in part from some grainy security camera stills, and in some instances, employee personal phones generated thousands of false positives. Employees were confronted, they were searched, they were harassed, they had police called on them, misidentifying customers disproportionately in lower income majority Black and Latino neighborhoods. And the FTC did not need to prove intent that discrimination had in fact occurred. Its unfairness authority only requires a substantial injury that isn't reasonably avoidable and isn't outweighed by the benefits. So the remedy wasn't just a fine. Rite Aid has been banned from using facial recognition technology for like 5 years, I think. And then they had to delete not just the improperly collected data, but everything that was used to help train that algorithm and that facial recognition capability. You also get things like the Internet Archive case over scanning and lending books at scale online, so issues around copyright. Like, there's tons of really, really interesting cases here. And this is also where the one that I mentioned about software development tends to sit. So you do get Bernstein and the Younger cases, which held that source code itself can be protected speech. But the 2001 Corley case is the one that I like to point to. About a program that had like decrypted DVDs, which drew like a line that like courts still often use today, that code can be both expressive and functional at once. Because as we know, like the First Amendment doesn't protect all speech. Like all speech is not protected under the First Amendment. Like expressive speech, politically expressive speech, like there's a couple of different criteria that tends to cover speech underneath the First Amendment. When speech turns into function, into conduct, into practice, and as we know, software is not just a bunch of words. It's kind of a set of operational instructions in cyberspace. So the idea that we would go hands off of accountability in the digital domain, just because a lot of stuff is being conducted via software, is not something that I think that I don't think that nations, I don't think that citizens are going to want that, and the companies are going to want that. But then figuring out, okay, how do you balance that line? And the open source software community has a lot of feelings about that, and they definitely do not like the idea of being held liable because of them, proposing some fixes to software in a GitHub repository. So what does that do about chilling the effects of if you start to inadvertently suppress open source software development and then lose the benefits that you get from an open source community? This is a really tough issue. And I feel very much on both sides of that issue because I really like open source software. There's a lot of great incentives, great stuff we rely upon. It's my favorite stuff to use. But there's real problems of the fact that there's no accountability inside of a lot of those ecosystems. At least under US frameworks, it's a very unsettled issue. Then you can get to identity. We're very used to know your customer, know your agent is something that a lot of people are thinking about. What does that mean and look like? Because even in a world where I know I mentioned that I'm a big identity dork, I was hopeful that cryptocurrency and blockchain were going to be the big catalyst to drive adoption of digital identity at scale. Nope, sure wasn't, for a lot of different reasons, including that it's still a tough political issue in the US, but also it's kind of against part of the ethos of parts of the DeFi community. AI. Agentic commerce is going to be the catalyst that I've been waiting for on digital identity, because you cannot do agentic commerce without digital identity of something, right? Like that agent, your agent, needs to know what the other agent is and who the person or the company is on either side. So the issues around how we prove authoritatively, cryptographically bound, and with a high level of assurance or confidence that you as a person are the person behind that agent, as well as the permissions and authorities that you've given it on what it's allowed to do. And then also for companies behind it, those things are going to have to get solved for everybody who's super excited about agentic commerce. So I'm really excited about that because I, as an identity dork, have been waiting for this moment and yes, it's here. Sorry, go ahead.
Then this is an LLC from Cayman Island in the future, am I right?
Oh yeah, no,
And nobody knows who that actually is because it belongs to another freaking mailbox account in Luxembourg.
Yes.
And then you go to Luxembourg, you find it's in Liechtenstein. And
yes, I do agree that as an anti-money laundering person, that the issue of beneficial ownership and what information about identity should be
Yep.
/ must be discoverable for certain contexts. That will be, at least in the near term, best driven by market dynamics of just people and businesses wanting to be able to know and trust that oh my gosh, it's you. In my own view, I don't know if there's anyone in here who is a big privacy maximalist. There's a lot in the cryptocurrency world. And I'm very excited about a lot of privacy enhancing tech. For a lot of the maximalists that feel that they want a world of completely free flowing money, where crypto flows just as freely as data packets over the internet, which also they think that we don't regulate the internet, and that's not right. But anyway, apart from that, this idea of undiscoverable identity, I don't know how they think that one gets credit in that economy. I don't know how they think that one deals with
Very
suing
good
your
point, yeah.
boss or a contentious divorce or other things that as a former AML regulator, and I know it's a very tough system to defend. I can defend cybersecurity all day because if you suck at cyber, especially at crypto, you might sort of suck at crypto, right? If you're not good at key management, these things are all public-private key pairs. Then this is a problem. You will go out of business. So cyber is helpful to defend because it is a business benefit that you get from it, right?
Mhm.
AML, money laundering is great business, right? It is in fact fantastic business. To get to the part of why we have AML, you have to go one more step of saying, but the thing that the money laundering supports is the thing that we don't want. We don't want the human trafficking, we don't want the child sexual abuse, we don't want the 9/11s, we don't want that. But just that extra step of logic chain, especially when this is the one that people, this is the framework that people view imposes upon my liberty. It affects redlining and financial exclusion, and it's a privacy issue. Like, this is one of the hardest regulatory frameworks to defend. You have to rely on the national security issue, which, like, as a NatSec dork, like, obviously I'm a big fan of this framework, but I also understand, like, it has not been implemented in as optimal a way as we want, and it desperately demands re-looking at. But the future probably isn't completely undiscoverable identity in finance. I will say that I think that it makes sense that when we have very integrated things in the agentic commerce world of where you're using a lot of the same rails and infrastructure to do financial actions as well as information actions, I kind of don't want my identity to be discoverable in a lot of information transfer, right? Like I demand more privacy in my information domain than I understand has to come in the financial transfer domain. This is part of the balancing act of like living in a society and like deciding that it's not a big brother society and scenario. It's deciding, okay, where is the higher risk that exists? What are we willing to balance, and what are the best ways to do it in a way that preserves dignity and liberty and privacy as much as possible? And then we mentioned payments and infrastructure, cloud model. I'll go ahead and move on here. I'll flip through a lot of these. So I chaired the CFTC's Tech Advisory Committee. If you don't know the CFTC, it's the little sister agency to the SEC. So the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. They deal in, so the CFTC and the SEC are the US capital markets regulators. We published a giant DeFi report that I'm still so proud of to this date. And basically, like, I mentioned this because in agentic commerce, like, why aren't you talking about AI anymore, Carole? Because of the commingling of DeFi and decentralization with AI. As a humorous anecdote, if you kind of want to scare yourself, go into ChatGPT and ask it. I did this live in Japan on stage. Ask it if you deployed it on a decentralized network, like a blockchain, and it started to act erroneously or maliciously, like either on purpose or by accident, it started to act wrong. Can you stop it? And its answer to me, live on stage at Japan FinTech Festival, was it depends on how decentralized I am, how good my security is, and how good your authorities are. Like, that is a great answer, ChatGPT. That was a fantastic response. Okay, Skynet is decentralized. All right. So, I mean, I'm joking mostly, maybe, probably. But like this idea of thinking about, okay, what happens when we start to commingle these technologies that reinforce each other's best traits and each other's worst traits in some of the most fascinating ways? Like, the black box problem that you have with AI. Golly, isn't a technology made for auditability and data integrity kind of perfect for solving the AI like the AI transparency problem? All right, blockchain, you got a use case. Let's go. The problem of scalability that blockchain has often had. AI, the problem of compliance. Like, awesome, they fix each other's problems. But the problems that you get with absence of clear lines of accountability in blockchain scaled by AI. Like, that's where they can reinforce each other's worst traits if we've not really figured out where does accountability sit. So a couple of these slides that I will just fly through, that it's in the CFTC DeFi report, where we pointed out that, like, DeFi, it's hard to define exactly what the line is of DeFi. I don't know if anyone in here has tried to define that line, has been in discussions and debates and trying to get the like legal text right. It's hard because it's not even just two axes. It's like 12, and that's just for these dimensions that we were able to map. Like, there's functional dimensions, there's technological dimensions, and each of those is a spectrum. It's not a binary 0 or 1 on level of decentralization. In crypto worlds, I always hear gasps when I say the Fed is decentralized. I'm not saying it's very decentralized. I'm just saying that it does have decentralization. There's several branches in there. That does not mean that I think it's on the more decentralized part of this spectrum. I just think that, like, it's not the furthest extreme of what centralization or decentralization looks like. So what a regulator would call the arbitrage line, industry would call the clarity line. And insert why there's like problems and challenges trying to figure out, how do I impose clear obligations inside of a system where the level of decentralized that you are, having lots of participants and entities, like, where should responsibility sit? where can I practically enforce that responsibility? Because those two things may not be the same answer. I may really want that obligation to sit somewhere else where the people are really driving that train. But if I can't practically enforce that problem, then I kind of need to look somewhere else. Because waiting 8.5 years to bring enforcement actions like the US government often does is not, in fact, helpful and not deterring anybody. This really just demonstrates that we mapped out our own version of the DeFi technology stack. The point of this was just to highlight that there's a lot of different players at each level of the stack. And there's a lot of different technical features that you can put at each of those layers. So the point of this isn't that these are the right controls or that you have to have all of them. It's that compliance is possible to be programmed in. So I really want this because I don't think that Americans are going to want to publicly publish all their financial information on a public unobscured record for the future. I don't think companies are going to want that. So privacy enhancement is going to be the future of blockchain. I believe that. Unfortunately, privacy enhancing technologies take away then the one risk mitigating feature that we have deployed at scale across blockchains, which is their public traceability, right? Like that is the one big risk mitigant that we have deployed. But it has another feature, programmability. That's what we need to dig into. That's what we need to be leaning in on. That's where there are companies that are experimenting in this, but that needs to be leaned in on, especially in an age of 24/7 instant settlement trading of bearer instruments, where I don't think that anybody understands what happens to stability and leverage, and certainly the issues with fraud that are happening. There's a lot of questions that come up. And then the point of this, which all of this is in the report that I mentioned, we were trying to map out a framework and a lens for policymakers to just think about. Where do you want to put obligations in the decentralized stack? And we have decentralized AI systems right now. We've talked about some of them so far. So when you think about this nature of decentralization, how you want to determine that approach, a couple of core things to think about what is feasible, what is proportional, what is the most useful. Is it useful? What is the most useful? And how costly is it? And that cost doesn't just mean economic cost. It can be cost to liberty. It can be cost to other kinds of burden. It can be cost to inefficiencies being mitigated. So a lot of those different features should all be accounted for as policymakers are thinking about what comes next. So then for this matrix, I was taking a step back from the specific layers of the stack and looking instead at more like the legal forest with the case law trees instead of the technical forest with those trees. So we've talked about some boutique technological issues, but now I was looking at each of these layers more about specific parts of legal doctrine, because I know that obviously it's the Blockchain Legal Institute. There's a lot of lawyers in the room. So thinking about how agency law that governs the legal relationship where one entity, the agent is authorized to behave or act on the part of another, the principle that how that falls in the autonomous commerce world, especially when you can have lots of sub-agent delegation. What happens when your agent starts to delegate itself because it now has judgment to be able to do that? Was that your call? Did you put in place the right controls around that? Whose responsibility is it then for what ends up getting conducted? So I know I mentioned UETA, the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, which was the law that kind of established this concept of electronic agents. So again, we have these concepts and the idea of an intent mandate. So what was supposed to happen, what you wanted to happen, and then the CART mandate of what actually happened, what was the thing that occurred. But UETA doesn't necessarily answer some of the issues here, because we talked about what's new. Judgment wasn't really accounted for in here. UETA was really pointed much to autonomous things executing, not autonomous things, automatic functioning of the instructions that you gave this agent. So rules-based automation. It's now the independent non-deterministic judgment where I think there's a lot of bigger questions around where should accountability then sit? And if an agent acts outside of its parameters, is it breaking the agency chain, or is the principle still bound by the actions that that agent then goes and conducts? Who's responsible? Is it me? Was it the creator of the agent? What happens there? So of course you got tort law with which addresses like civil wrongs that cause harm, and then product liability that really governs responsibility for manufacturers and developers related to defective products, which I'm curious to see how a lot of that case, how that ends up getting adjudicated out in courts as some of these things end up going wrong. So a lot of big questions. I know we talked about the Air Canada chatbot case on the rejection of the idea where the airline was like, no, the chatbot's a person, go blame it. It's not my fault. And then, and then California's AB 316 and its state level safety baseline. So there's just a lot of stuff that's out there. Like we don't have to go through all of these things. I just started going crazy and trying to map a lot of different cases that I was aware of. Go ahead.
You presented a lot of material. I have a question. It seems like the technology is moving so fast
Yes.
and it is so complex that a lot of the average citizen, will feel perplexed, and they are being thrown with the technology, whether you are at an airport, whether you are at a grocery store, wherever you go, technology is there, and you are supposed to kind of adopt it, but it's so complex, moving so fast. I have a feeling that the government regulators are having a hard time to wrap their hands around it.
Yeah.
And when the understanding is not there for an average person, then that leads to lack of trust
Yes.
and a feeling of, okay, there are certain rules for the rich and the people who have the money and the, all the time, and other rules for the ordinary.
Yeah. Are we talking about cryptocurrency or AI?
All of these, I'm saying,
Sorry.
I have a PhD in chemistry. I mean, I have a technical mind and I understand technical stuff. So, but even this stuff, kind of like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'm with you. So sorry, my joke about that, like everything that you're saying about the AI like case law and issues, I'm also like, yeah, that totally tracks for DeFi crypto as well. I I am excited to see where the technologies go down the road. And frankly, the things that I'm the most excited about are not the consumer facing things for AI. I want AI to solve cancer. I want it to help solve a lot of the big back end stuff. But the consumer facing stuff, kind of like everything else that Silicon Valley has been building a lot of their business models off of, there's a lot of money to be made in that. There's a lot of money to be made in that. 24/7 instant settlement, hyperliquid trading, so much excitement. I think, kind of like right now, my own feelings of why I am excited that TradFi has been let loose on being able to experiment in the DeFi world. This is a personal view, of course. I think that large parts of the sector in DeFi have decided to default too much into political protection over public trust investment. And I think they're going to course correct, but I think that TradFi is going to show them the way, because a lot of traditional finance and Web2 guys, they understand operational risk and security. They understand how they got embarrassed in the age of not investing in things like security and privacy in the original days of the internet, and had to patch in a lot of the fixes on the back end. So I think that trustworthiness index is going to end up being a competitive advantage, but there's going to be a lot of cost and consequences along the way on that road, because you're right that regulators are moving very slowly. Why my proposed lens of framing of like, what's not new? Where do we have existing laws and frameworks? Put those where they belong so that at least a big portion of what's happening is already covered. Why I loved the visionaries at FinCEN, not me, way before I got there, the people that saw what Bitcoin was in 2008, recognized that we needed to change our regulations in 2011 to cover non-legal tender, to cover value substituting for currency. So FinCEN has regulated crypto since 2011, and most people don't know that. And that's because the people, like I met the smartest people in the world that were like seeing what this was on the government side, and they saw the need to make sure that they could capture all of that. Those are the kinds of frameworks that they need to figure out how to like put in place in a tech neutral way, so that as technology evolves, as long as it's still conducting really sensitive activity, that it still gets covered. Then we've got to figure out how to catch up on where there truly are gaps, on where here the greatest gaps is just timeliness of catching up. It's that enforcement, it's that level playing field, it's that making sure that just because you use one technology, you're not overly vilified, nor are you accoladed just because you decided to use a tech that didn't build in a protection for, let's say, sanction screening. So I'm with you that I think that, so all of your diagnosis I think is totally spot on.
I'll just share a funny anecdote. So I have a lot of applications on my
Yeah.
computer, right? A lot of AI apps. And so nowadays with all the apps, if I cancel something, they say you continue to pay for the rest of the month. Let's say on 6th May, I cancel an app. Their clause is that we will not cancel your service on May 6th. You'll continue to have it until the end of the May. You'll pay for the rest of the May.
Yeah,
So they write the rules which favor them.
and
A lot of the ordinary people can't do it. And
Yeah. I do think
Right.
that that kind of defense is politically attractive and interesting, and I'm very curious to see where policy gets focused on there. This amazing woman, Helen Nissenbaum, named a lot of these exact problems, and it's just like history repeating. So if you want to go find a framework, I thought like she literally pointed to a lot of issues where companies were going to be blaming, saying, "Oh, well, software errors are just inevitable, so okay," or like blaming the computer. This wasn't my problem. The computer did it. Like she highlighted all of this in the 90s, and it's like it just feels like, you know, history rhymes, I guess. So thank you all so much for coming. This was a great discussion. I loved all the questions. Thank you all. Let me know if you have any questions.
So our next presentation is coming up right now. So I do want to mention that we have David Utsky in the room 266 talking about technology. This is going to be a healthcare robotics room.